It's not a clickbait title because I absolutely 100% believe it. The best moment in a game this year is a video of an actor lip-syncing to a song. Now, I'm going to spend several thousand words convincing you why, but first I need to say two things. One, this is absolutely, unambiguously going to spoil the game Immortality, top to bottom, tip to tail. Though I will say, this is a game that lots of people finish and still don't have a great idea of what's going on. Two, and just as importantly, this is an essay about an incredibly mature game, and that means complex themes, but it also means nudity, it means adult relationships, it means violence. This is also an essay about licensed music, about devastatingly emotional performances by famous artists, and funnily enough, those are pretty much the two most forbidden things on YouTube. If I made this video the way I want to, you would just not be able to watch it at all because it'd get 7 different kinds of restricted. But in fact, I did make the video I want to, and it's available on Nebula. Nebula is a streaming service designed for basically exactly these situations, and it's where you can watch the true version of this essay with all the images and sounds and music I've had to cut out of this one. I hate to create 2 versions like this, but my options are kind of limited to do it this way or not at all. Anyone can sign up for just over $1 a month using the link in the description. They sponsored this video, and I'm grateful for it because if they weren't around, you probably wouldn't be watching this. Sorry, on with the video. Immortality is a game made of dozens and dozens of FMV clips. In other words, videos of real people acting, similar to the developer's previous efforts, Her Story and Telling Lies. That means that gameplay is a little different than in most games. For instance, you obviously can't directly control any of the characters in this game because everything is pre-filmed. Instead, the goal and the game of Immortality is to navigate your way through the clips while answering the question, what the heck is going on in Immortality? And there are 3 general phases to that question. Phase 1 is, on a base level, what am I even watching? Great question. Very simply, the clips in Immortality come from 3 different movies, all invented for this game. The first is Ambrosio, a steamy religious drama from the late 60s. The second is Minsky, an artsy crime mystery from the early 70s, and the third is Two of Everything, a mass-market thriller from the late 90s. This is archival footage, and as such, it hasn't gone through any kind of post-production. Most clips start with someone saying action and end at cut. The scenes are also from all stages of film development, so some might look finished with professional lighting and costumes, but others could be a bare-bones rehearsal or even a recorded table read or location scout. This means that even with all the clips unlocked, you can't really watch the entirety of any of these 3 movies. You can get a pretty good picture of them. I could describe the complete plot of Ambrosio, but your information is always going to feel a bit incomplete. That challenge is hugely accentuated by the fact that you can't unlock clips in chronological order. Navigation through the hours of footage is only possible through match cut, meaning that you zoom in on one thing in the scene and some unknown system matches it to a similar thing in another scene. Zoom in on an actor and you'll be taken to another clip with that actor. Zoom in on an apple and you'll get whisked to another scene with an apple. Or at least some kind of fruit. But that actor might have been replaced halfway through filming, and those apples might be in 2 entirely separate movies. As such, you'll probably have to bounce around for hours before you're able to put enough of a film together to understand one plot, let alone all 3 of them. But even before you're confident enough to do that, you'll probably start forming some questions, like, what happened to these movies? Or, why hasn't the star aged in 30 years? By the way, I'm not going to really talk about the plots of each movie in Immortality, but if you're curious about that, I like the breakdown given by Sam Going in this video, linked below. It's around this time, after jumping from clip to clip for a few hours, that you might run into Phase 2 of what the heck is going on in Immortality. Phase 2 is, oh god, wait, is this a horror game? A charming bit of game feel in Immortality is the way you interact with the film itself. Since clips start on the match cut with the previous, you'll often have to rewind to see the whole thing. And rewinding happens very physically, requiring you to actually roll back a film reel rather than just skip digitally through scenes. And as you wind those reels backwards, you might hear this ominous tone or feel your controller shake, and if you rewind at exactly the right speed at these moments, something happens to the film. A match cut you didn't choose, where the protagonist, an actress named Marissa Marcel, is replaced by someone else entirely. Enter the One and the Other, two beings that seem to exist wholly outside the world of these movies, and yet bleed through it, present in countless scenes, if only you play them backwards. There's no scripted first encounter with them, it's simply whatever reversed clip you stumble into first, but no matter the scene, it's likely to be unnerving. The star of all three movies, Marissa Marcel, is personable and accommodating and very traditionally pretty. She is fun to watch in almost every scene she's in. The One, the being that takes her place in these hidden scenes, has a very different energy. The One is intense. Their dialogue seems to refer to events outside the films or even living memory. Their interactions with other cast and crew are aggressive, often violent. Most shocking of all is the fact that the One and the Other seem aware of you, the player. Many of their scenes start or end with direct eye contact with the camera, the One not interested in the camera operator, but in us, the people on the other side of the screen. When they sometimes speak to the clueless other actors in the scene, but they also sometimes direct it outward at the viewer, and maybe the worst part is they are just freaking inscrutable. Whether they're talking to the unwitting actors, each other, or to us, their motivations are shrouded in mystery. The scenes with them feel too vague to interpret literally, and so initially we as players are forced to interpret them emotionally, trying to understand each scene by its vibe only. But the vibe of the scenes are... And so, they leave you with this gaping hole in your understanding of the game's universe, unpredictable and often frightening others wandering like ghosts through these three films. Even when out of sight, their presence lingers. Several hours into my playthrough, after I had uncovered much of the plot to the films and had several encounters with them, I found the last scene in the last movie, Two of Everything. Two of Everything is, at least partially, about a burnt-out pop singer, and as such, the last scene of the movie has her abandoning her stardom and singing an acoustic version of her hit song in a cafe. The idea is pretty straightforward. She's now doing music for herself instead of for the pop culture machine. It's a fine scene. A little trite, but in line with the rest of the movie. But partway through her song, I heard that tone and felt the controller rumble, indicating I could find a hidden scene here by reversing the footage. And when I did, I found myself in the scene. The reason this essay is titled what it is, it's... So the One stands in the dark with a mic, and they're also singing up parallel to the scene we just left. But they're not singing, it's clearly lip-synced. It's not the One's voice we're familiar with, and in fact, it's a song that exists in the real world. They're singing Candy Says, a song by Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, specifically a cover of that song by another singer, Anohni. But even though the One isn't singing, the emotion they're conveying is off the charts. They smile briefly, their gaze never touches the camera, instead seeming to look for something within themselves. Minutes into the song, one unbroken take, they start weeping, and minutes after that they move off camera, leaving us in the dark with the song still playing. Do you ever watch or read or hear something that's so viscerally emotional that even though you have no idea what the thing is or why it's happening or what caused the feeling in the first place, it still affects every fiber of your being? That the emotion kind of transcends rationality, that you don't have to understand the logic of whatever the thing is in order to receive the tidal wave of feeling that's coming through the art? That's what this scene was to me, on first viewing. I didn't know what was happening, or why. I wasn't even familiar with the song being sung, but I watched it all 6 minutes, even after the one left and the music kept ringing into the black. And as I explored more clips and found more hidden moments and started to piece together the rest of the plot, that feeling kept echoing in my head. The scene doesn't answer any questions, really. It doesn't provide any information that can't be found elsewhere. But those 6 minutes changed the tone, the arc, even the genre of the story for me. The song Candy Says was released in 1969 as the first song on the Velvet Underground's third album. Written by the band's frontman Lou Reed, the song is explicitly about, and in the voice of, a woman named Candy Darling. Darling was an actress and New York personality in the 60s, one of Andy Warhol's so-called superstars. She was, and is, a trans icon. And that status comes from many things: her striking aesthetic, her performances in Warhol's films, but also in no small part from featuring in 2 Lou Reed songs. Candy has the second verse in Walk on the Wild Side.
Candy came from out on the island.
But more importantly for our purposes, the song Candy Says is, naturally, all about candy. More than 3 decades after the song's original release, a singer named Anohni covered Candy Says. That's the version we hear in the game. And more than a little of that moment's impact, its incredible emotionality, is due not just to the song, but to that cover specifically. But that impact won't really make sense until we start peeling back what Immortality is about. It's high time we talked about what's up with the one. Okay, here's the big pill you have to swallow with Immortality. That title is literal. The one and the other, these creepy apparitions that show up in the game's hidden scenes, are actually immortal beings. You can read them as metaphors and symbolism as well, but the game's plot does not work if you don't accept that on some level, we're looking at people that have been alive forever. And here's the next big pill: they're not just immortal, they can shapeshift, assuming the form of other people, and they often, though not always, take that form by killing the original person. So Marissa Marcel, the lead in all these movies, the person we've been looking at for most of the game, is not really Marissa Marcel. The real Marissa died in France before she was ever in a movie, killed by the one wearing a different person's form. Shape-shifting vampires! Possibly the biggest pill, though, is I'm now going to ask you to empathize with one of these shape-shifting vampires, even though they have absolutely killed people. This is phase 3 of what the heck is going on in Immortality. It's not actually a horror game. I know, it's a lot. One of the things we learn about these immortals, the one and the other, is they've previously tried to influence humanity through storytelling and art. The highest profile example of this is when they tried to give us, quote, the greatest story ever told.
We tried to elevate humanity by telling them the greatest story.
Which was, in fact, Jesus Christ. In the fiction of this game, Jesus and Mary were both immortal, shape-shifting vampires.
You died for our sins? A story.
Are you empathizing yet? I bring up the whole Christ thing because 1, it's bananas, and 2, it represents a split between the one and the other. When the Christ story doesn't succeed in elevating humanity, the other kind of gives up on the whole concept of creating art for humans. It's not worth it, the other says. Humans are violent and greedy and stupid and mess everything up. But the One, our main character, is not so jaded. The One still wants to connect with people and still wants to create art. It's one of the reasons the One assumes the body and life of Marissa Marcel. They find her acting career and spirit compelling, irresistible. Through Marissa, the One is able to help create movies, what they probably feel is the most influential art of the 20th century. We get many hidden clips of the One performing, dancing and singing in ways as or more beautiful than what Marissa's allowed to do. Multiple hidden scenes feature arguments between the One and the other on this difference in philosophy, with the other seemingly unable to comprehend why the One keeps going down this path.
We created the perfect story. I watched you die and live, but they squandered it. It changed nothing.
They weren't ready then.
And although the other's negativity can make them seem like an antagonist, this is a fair question. Consistently, the One encounters obstacles to making their true, meaningful art. The director of Ambrosio is a Hitchcockian misogynist asshole. Celebrity, to Marissa Marcel, is frequently being interrogated about everything except her craft. The filmmaking process itself is exhausting, full of non-artistic grunt work. One of the game's mysteries is, why did these films never release? And the answers often point to more human flaws getting in the way of pure art. But the hurdles of humanity's failings belie a more fundamental problem, which is that it seems the One is rebelling against however their immortality works. Although this is never directly stated, I get the sense that the nature of the One and the other is largely treating humans as interchangeable and disposable. The other never seems attached to the people they inhabit, nor do we ever see them reflect on the forms they took in previous lives. But we do see that from the One. Throughout the hidden scenes, they flash through visions of their previous forms, bodies from a wide range of eras and locations. The One says that when they take over a body, they inherit some of its memories, its emotions. This is how they're so attached to the spirit, the life of Marissa Marcel. It also led them to bearing generations of not fully understood trauma, the memories of their countless inhabited bodies still present enough to cause waking nightmares. But despite the trauma, I think the One wants to live in these memories, become part of the person rather than just using their body. The fact that they can't do this, that an eternal life of body swapping requires a sort of detachment, seems to be tearing them apart. Another of the best scenes in the game starts as Marissa stares into a mirror, then jumps to the One's other inhabited bodies until we finally see them undiluted and they say, weeping, "I can't remember all the faces." As the years go on, the effort of maintaining this presence and connection wears on the One more and more until they almost literally start to fall apart. It's with all this knowledge that we return to Candy Says. Candy says, "I've come to hate my body and all that it requires in this world." I don't think, unlike Candy Darling, we should read the One specifically as trans. They've lived thousands of years. I think they're probably beyond gender. But despite this, those lyrics ring just as true. Candy says, "I'd like to know completely what others so discreetly talk about." We've watched for decades the One attempt to become part of humanity, to use their talents to create great art, and yet even now they feel separate from it, not able to experience the ups and downs of life in the same way as the humans that surround them. I'm going to watch the bluebirds fly over my shoulder, an admission to themselves that maybe this life they're pursuing is impossible, that art, that joy, are just not meant for them. Followed by the line, brutally ironic when sung by an immortal being, "I'm going to watch them pass me by, maybe when I'm older." But even more devastating than any single lyric of the song is the knowledge driven home when they fall away from the mic that the one is not singing. This, like their other attempts at making art, is a performance that's not reality, an imitation that reinforces their separation. As I mentioned earlier, the cover that's playing in the scene is by the singer Anohni. Anohni herself is a trans artist with a one-of-a-kind, absolutely haunting voice. She was also a friend of Lou Reed. Actually, friend is underselling it. Anohni has said that Reed was like a father to her, a devoted musical mentor and supporter. They actually perform Candy Says together on the live recording of Reed's Berlin. And with all due respect to Lou Reed, Anohni's version is simply the best version of the song. The depth of the emotion in her performance, the power and fragility of her voice. Anohni is absolutely familiar with the legacy of Candy Darling. She said Darling's life is almost like folklore to her. And the sheer weight of humanity present in the performance, Darling's influence as a trans artist, Reed's influence as a musician and father figure, lend everything about this rendition an emotionality that can't be overstated. When the one falls away from the mic in their lip-synced performance, it feels like an act of mourning, a recognition that they'll never have the kind of connection that produced this song. Just as the song was a turning point for my understanding of the character, it's a turning point for their understanding of themselves, a lamentation for the life they'll never have. This is, in fact, the exact meaning of the scene's closest cinematic reference, the finale of Mulholland Drive, in which a singer falls away from a pre-recorded song and causes the same revelation in the protagonists. But in Immortality, the one is both the singer and the character that needs to be woken up, meaning they're essentially performing their own eulogy for the life they wish they could have. It is a one-person, unbroken, emotional supernova. But that's not the end of the story. Thousands of words ago, I said the title of this game had to be taken literally, Immortality, a game about immortals. But even within literality, there's more than one interpretation of the word. Candy Darling died when she was 29 years old, 5 years after Candy Says was written, and yet her legacy has remained, turned to folklore. Lou Reed died in 2013 at 71. 7 months before, on stage in Paris, he sang Candy Says again with Anohni. It was the final performance of his life. It is such an unbelievably moving recording that I honestly have trouble watching it. I think both she and he understand that this represents a sort of moving on, from Candy to Lou to Anohni, the torch being passed forward, the art persisting even after the person fades. And this, ultimately, is what Immortality is about too. This is the revelation the one has during their lament. Art is not preserved in the body, not kept alive by a single being. It's created by passing from one to another. The final clip, chronologically, is the body of Marissa Marcel, the spirit of the one, being immolated. But this is not meant as literal self-destruction. Instead, it is a passing of the torch from them to us, the art of these films and their performance preserved because we have now seen them. It is a kinder collective form of immortality, carried on by us, like the essence of all great art. What do you think I'd see if I could walk away from me? As you know, this video was sponsored by Nebula and CuriosityStream. I won't talk too much longer about it, but as well as the intended cut of this video, on Nebula you can see a whole host of fully original videos by me and many other creators. Do you know Lindsay Ellis has a new hour-long video on The Lord of the Rings? She does, and it's on Nebula. In addition, you get access to the documentary juggernaut CuriosityStream, home to more programs on megastructures and space and the deep sea than even I can watch. Both of these services are available to you for a year for $15. That's not $15 a month. That's $15 that you pay once and get 365 days of access. You want to see this video with nearly 50 alternate and uncensored shots, lines, and music? This is the deal for you. Want to see a whole bunch of other good stuff? This is the deal for you, too.